I would like them to buff traps, mines, totems, because they are the least amount played, which should be on their little board. What is the least style of play? They should have written down mines, traps, totems. Hello and welcome to this video. Now, we're going to talk about the buffs, nerfs, and changes that either I expect, I want, or will probably never happen, but should happen. Now, as you can see, we got a few teasers already. I won't play them or anything, just in case you don't want to actually see what the changes are until you get in the game. But obviously, go to the PoE website and watch the video if you want to find all that out. Now, the skills I expect to be changed and nerfed. I'll look at my list. Volcanic Fissure or Snaking, I expect to get some sort of nerf, possibly even Volcanic Fissure. Ground Slam of Earth Breaking, possibly even Ground Slam, because obviously the base has to change half the time for the Transfigured to change as well. Obviously Forbidden Rite of Sacrifice was OP, very expensive, so it shouldn't get big nerfed, but it probably will be nerfed to the point where it's taken out of meta for that style. A couple of others you might see changes to that I hope they don't change Righteous Fire, but it's possible that they change up some of the things with Righteous Fire. Hopefully a little bit of a buff than a nerf, because it still is a very niche thing. Smite of Divine Judgment, so Smite into that, might see some changes in some numbers and stuff. And then some of the other stuff that might get tweaked, but probably not because they're niche, is stuff like Flicker Strike. Cyclone they only just brought back, so I don't expect them to nerf it. I hope they slightly buff it more to make more people want to play it, but it's depending on how they look at it. The Cyclone was used by a lot of builds, but half the builds used it as a movement skill, not a actual movement skill / trigger, not actually as the main skill. So they're the skills I expect to change. Now, why are we looking at the PoB passive tree? Obviously, if you read down the bottom, movement speed. One thing they really need to just get off is the ideology of realistic combat. We are not playing King Arthur in King Arthur's time, where we are trying to be realistic, so armor having a movement speed penalty, gear being weighing you down, meaning you move slower, bigger weapons mean you're pretty much just throwing a telephone pole at people in the slow motion of a telephone pole. Now, the attack speed of two-handed weapons, I would like them to slightly increase the speed. Just slightly. It's almost there, but it's still too slow in my opinion. But movement speed on this side of the tree is just trash. We have the linked stuff. I think it's here. Yes. The linked is like 1% of the player base plays linked. Generally, it's group play designed to play with a function amongst the group, and it is a very, very 1% thing. We have rage on 1% movement speed per 5 rage. Generally, you have about 30 rage. Obviously, you can increase that, but that means we end up with 6% movement speed. That's barely enough to overcome the armor penalty. And then we just got 5% movement speed here. And linked curse, it slows down the other people. That's why that's showing up. So yeah, you either get rage-based character or you play Link on this side of the tree. They need to add 30 to 40% movement speed throughout this left side. The right side, obviously, because they're trying to do a more realistic sort of combat, which is why PoE2 combat sucks, because they want you to play shield block, stab, move back, shield block, stab, move back in PoE2. The realistic side, they need to get off that ideology. It's a magic-based game. There is no reason why a Marauder or a Templar or even a Witch that goes towards the Templar side shouldn't have the capability to get movement speed the same as a maybe 20%, 30% less than what a Ranger can do. The Ranger, 200+% movement speed, pretty much is your endgame. If you're building a Ranger based build, you can pretty much get like 200 plus 250 movement speed. That should be like 150, 180 easy for pretty much the top 10, 15 builds. Should be able to achieve on this side as well. Because pretty much, say we go armor based, which is obviously this side of the tree, it's heavily armor. You are taking hits, and then you are moving as slow as I do with my disability, whilst being this super powerful, create fire out of your weapon, summoning totems, all that. They need to get off the ideology. Now, the buffs I would expect or like, if we have a look at amend notes, I expect within this league or next league that Shadow gets some sort of change. I said that a little while ago. Shadow needs to be changed. They need to stop nerfing things before they buff the reason why they're nerfing. Because either this league or next league, Sanctum's apparently going to turn back to its glory days, where it's actually worth doing as early currency and all that. You can still get stuff, but they took a lot of the reason why people did it out. But before they actually buffed Sanctum, they nerfed the Sanctum meta skill, which was obviously Hex Blast, and Shadow pretty much became obsolete as far as some of the things that you can do in the Shadow. There's obviously still builds that Shadow can do. The top one would be Lightning Strike and Smite of Divine Judgment and Dual Strike are the top skills that the Shadow still does. So if you don't want to play them, pretty much you ignore this whole class. The Golem change, they might actually go back on some of the Golem stuff, because it sort of became you must run Golems to a certain degree because the buff was just so good. So I expect this league or next league's Shadow to get a change. Probably in the same league that they changed Sanctum. I would like them to reverse some of the nerf of Hex Blast, I would like them to buff traps, mines, totems, because they are the least amount played, which should be on their little board. What is the least style of play? They should have written down: mines, traps, totems. Those three things, every skill that is assigned a mine, trap, or totem skill should be what they're looking at buffing. If not, then they're wrong. If they're looking at the skills that people are using on a small level, but they're not those three categories, then they should just give up their ideology of nerfing this, but because it increases the player base or whatever. Because unless you work on the least used styles, the skills do not matter. Because you can turn a lot of things into totem, traps, mines, whatever, with supports and all that. And the skills do not matter if the totem, mine, and trap playstyle is still terrible as far as what you can actually achieve if you want to go, I feel like throwing mines out and exploding things. Oh, I only got a couple of ways I can actually do that to a decent level. Pretty much the melee and the range side, even the wand or staff, they shouldn't be looking at the skills that are to do with that, except for nerfing the ones that are overperforming and then buffing the ones that people just refuse to use. That's just general. What are people using? What are people not using? But the play style of the totems, mines, and traps should be what they're trying to improve, not the skills. The skills will come along because to make the playing better, you have to increase the skills and the passive tree or the sentences, and it will come along with improving the playstyle. It's just simple mechanics of achieving goal A. You end up achieving goal B, C, D because it interacts with goal A. Now, as far as endgame, I don't expect them to do much. Obviously, they're going to add some other boss or some other thing with the league. It'll probably be a invitation type thing. Seems to be what they're doing. You grind your way through to an invitation, you do the invitation, and then you repeat and grind through. It seems to be the floor plan of how to do it because other ARPGs are doing it as well. You grind through, fight boss once, grind through again. But I think they should really try to bring back some of the old school PoE where you had the areas that you had to build up. Not just completely destroy the atlas or maps or anything, but white maps, yellow maps, red maps, and then put the T17s in with Pinnacle Boss and have they can come up with a word or a breakdown of what they are, and then give you an ability to buff the maps that are without any void stones or anything. you can buff the white maps, or you can buff the yellow, or you can buff the red, or you can buff T17 and Pinnacle bosses to a higher, not necessarily level, but you pretty much are buffing the overall loot, the mobs. You pretty much sort of still run white maps, but say they're at a difficulty of red maps. Now it sounds a little weird, but the ability for you to buff XYZ in a broken down sort of bit. I'm not saying that you can get red tier stuff in white. It just makes it more difficult, and you are better off getting 4 void stones, putting all the void stones in, and then buffing each section. But the maps in those sections only get buffed by completing whatever. Whether it's a sideline Pinnacle boss, say yellow maps, you have Black Star and you have Infinite Hunger as your points. And obviously, every time you beat that, you earn a point, and it becomes, say, 10% harder. And then only those maps, even if you are running T16 4 Voidstone white maps, as in the maps that are initially in the white zone, get buffed by that. The next one, you have to beat Eda and Exarch to buff yellow. Only those 2 bosses buff those maps. Red, you can add Shaper, Elder, and Maven. But I personally would put Maven in the next area, but you can add all 3 of them. Only beating those bosses buff red. And then you want to do Pinnacle bosses and T17 buffing. You've got to beat Uber Elder, Uber Elder, Uber Shaper, Uber Maven, Uber Eda, Uber Exarch, and the whatever else they add, obviously league to league, at a high level. That way, there is endgame, and then we end up with endgame, with different levels for each different play style and players. You would end up with an endgame which suits everyone. If you got a Giga character that can just wipe out Uber Maven or Uber Shaper, or farm T17s like their T1s, you can buff that top zone to the point where it is now difficult. If you don't have that type of character, you have a step down, you buff the middle zone, and you can still achieve the same sort of achievement from that. A step down, so you got a character that can farm Shaper, can't do much more than farm Shaper, can do T17 normal thing, but can't take out the boss. You can buff the bottom section so that that person ends up in endgame, being able to complete content at a decent level, getting drops, and it will actually increase the player base for a longer period of time, because there won't be that many people that are playing the Uber killers. They'll be trying to get to that point. So you're going to keep playing, and they'll see the amount of people that actually play over the course of the league stay up, in my opinion, and it will actually create a sort of end game that can actually turn into end game. Like there is literally a ceiling that is so high that you could actually create it so difficult that even the best builds that were deleting Uber bosses and everything, that they would actually take them the same amount of time as a league starter taking out Shaper with just a general decent build with like 1-2 million. So, just a recap, they should eliminate the penalty or add 30 or 40% more movement speed, flat movement speed, not attached to anything. Movement speed like this, nope, this, where it just gives you movement speed, 30 or 40% movement speed. And they should create the end game where you only buff the maps that are in normal white, normal yellow, normal red, and then T17 and Pinnacle Uber bosses. So, hopefully that was interesting, and I'd like to hear your feedback, and I'll get back to you next time in the next video, and goodbye.